morning, Mr. Mkwena. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, DCJ.
Before we start with the oral evidence, I'm going to make an order that has got nothing to do with the witness who will be giving evidence today. It's an order relating to some application for leave to cross-examine. Let me deal with that and then we can start. The order that I'm going to make relates to an application that was brought by Mr. Kevin Wakeford for leave to cross-examine Mr. Angelo Grizi and Mr. Franz Hendrik Stein Foster, who previously gave evidence in this commission in relation to Busasa. I'm going to make this order and will only give reasons if it becomes necessary at a later stage. The order I make is that, one, the applicant's non-compliance with the timeframes provided for in the rules governing the Commission's proceedings in relation to the orders set out below, and to the extent necessary, extending such timeframes. Okay, I'm going to rephrase that. The applicant's non-compliance with the timeframes provided for in the rules governing the Commission's proceedings in relation to applications for leave to cross-examine a witness is hereby condoned. Two, the applicant is hereby granted, in terms of Rule 3.3.6, read with Rules 3.4, 3.5, 3.6, 3.7, and 3.8, leave to give oral evidence and to cross-examine the witnesses who have given evidence and implicated him, namely Mr. Angelo Grizi and Mr. Franz Hendrik Stein Foster, on such terms as the chairperson will give at the commencement of the cross-examination. Three, the applicant is granted leave in terms of Rule 3.9 to make written and oral submissions on the possible findings and conclusions that the Commission ought to make on the evidence placed before it, insofar as that evidence relates to him. The cross-examination of Mr. Grizi will take place on Wednesday this week, and at the commencement of the proceedings, I will announce the amount of time that I will give the applicant to cross-examine each one of those two witnesses. Yes, Mr. Mkwena.
Mr. Chair, on the 15th of August 2019, the Commission dispatched correspondence to Mr. Duduzane Zuma and his legal team, wherein Mr. Duduzane Zuma was invited to appear before this commission and to answer questions by the commission's legal team. And on the 5th of September 2019, the commissions dispatched a letter to Mr. Zuma and his legal team responding to a letter which was inadvertently not responded to of the 20th of June 2019, where Mr. Zuma and his legal team were assured that today, when we commence with the proceedings, they would not be postponed and that we will never stand down the matter as there were queries relating to the previous sittings. Fundamentally, Mr. Chair, Mr. Zuma was also informed that today he will be expected to answer questions in relation to 6 witnesses that testified before this commission, and their evidence was previously led through different members of the legal team. For completeness, Chair, those witnesses are the evidence of Mr. Jonas, Mr. Tukwana, Advocate Ramatlhodi, Advocate Mofe, Mr. Boysen, and Mr. Sundaram. And that correspondence was duly acknowledged and received by Mr. Duduzane Zuma's legal team. Mr. Duduzane Zuma is here today. He has availed himself to come and answer those questions. He is being represented by different legal teams depending as to on which matter one is referring to. May I allow them an opportunity to place themselves on record, Chair?
Yes, let's do that.
Mr. Chair, I appear for Mr. Zuma, together with Mr. Hubert, on instructions from Mr. van der Merwe, who sits next to him.
Thank you.
Mr. Commissioner, I appear on behalf of Mr. Duduzane Zuma on all issues in respect to of which he will be cross-examined, save in relation to Mr. Mcebisi Jonas, instructed by BDK attorneys, Mr. Krauser.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, if I may perhaps say the following. Mr. Zuma has not been subpoenaed to be here in terms of the Act.
Yes, I was going to make that
Yes.
point as well. Yes.
That means that there are certain limitations on the proceedings and what our learned colleagues can ask of Mr. Zuma and what he is legally obliged to do in that regard. I want to give you the assurance that we are not going to take any technical points. However, there must be a basis laid before our learned friend, and of course you have to give permission for cross-examination. Mr. Zuma is here, as I say, not under subpoena, but because he wants to be here, and we would expect our learned colleague to be interested in what he has to say, and that our learned colleague will not present a case against Mr. Zuma as if they're in opposing camps. And I take it that this commission will also be open to accept what Mr. Zuma has to say, and you will make your findings in due course. So once again, these are not adversarial proceedings, they're inquisitorial, and we are merely here to assist in the process. Thank you, Mr.
No, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, surely these proceedings will be conducted within the ambit of the rules of the Commission, and I think the one that is also paramount would be Rule 3.2, whereby questions should be posed in order to assess and in order to get to the truthful of the evidence of any witness that appears before the Commission. For the purpose of this session, Mr. Chair, we'll be referring to a number of documents. Before you, Chair, there must be 3 Archive files. You will see, Chair, that at the spine of the 2 files, you'll find that the one is marked as A and the one is marked as B. Those are the documents which were referred and relied upon when Mr. Jonas was led.
Yes,
Yes, and you'll see that there is,
that is A and B.
that is A and B, that
Yes.
really relates to Mr. Jonas. And for ease of reference, we propose that that A and B be referred to as Exhibit LL1. You will see when you open a folder of the first thick file, Chair, there must be a divider that already has marked it as Exhibit LL1. But for ease of reference, you can also refer to them because they are marked at the spine as A and B, simply for you to be able to locate it with much more ease.
Well, if we just say they are Exhibit LLA, Exhibit LLB, Exhibit LLC, would that not be adequate?
It might not, because when you now deal with different witnesses, we have now created a separate folder for each, even though the numbering might be continuous, but for convenience, it becomes much more easy. If you know that LL1 is for documents in respect of Mr. Dukwana, LL2 is the second witness, LL3 is the following witnesses. If you go to the document, Chair,
Yes, I
that
can
is A,
see.
yes.
I can see. It's just that the way we have dealt with exhibits most of the time, you will recall, is that I prefer that what the exhibit is should be reflected on the spine of
Yes.
the lever arch file, so that if I'm looking for exhibit LL1,
It
I
should,
should
yes,
see that
exactly,
on the
yes.
spine. I shouldn't see exhibit LL and then I have to go through a lot of
Definitely.
documents inside to find
That's one had hoped that has happened, but Chair will deal with that file. But for the purposes of the questioning in this regard, you'll see that the first file goes from page 1, and the numbering that we are relying on, because these documents were used from time to time, they might be having different numberings, but
Yes.
we are going to restrict ourselves to the red numbering
Yes.
that you'll find on the left-hand side. And then
Yes.
if you go to the first file, it must be going from page 1, and it ends up at page 334.
Are you under A?
I'm under A, Chair.
You see, what we could do is on the spine, we could write exhibit LL1 to exhibit LL2 if inside the lever arch file you have got both exhibit LL1 and exhibit LL2. So at least on the spine, the reader is told what is inside.
Yeah. We can mark the two files A and B as
Yes.
LL1. Both of them.
LL1.
Yes.
So then we can have LL1A,
A and
LL1B.
LL1B. Yes, it makes sense.
No, that's fine. That's as long as what is inside, if there is different exhibits, is reflected on the spine as well.
Now, the third file is the one that now have exhibit the LL2 up until LL7. So
Yes.
for now, let's mark as the Chair has proposed, the first file
Yeah.
as LL1A, and the next file dealing with the matters relevant to Mr. Jonas as LL1B. And the third file is the small file, Chair.
And we must just remember to make sure the witnesses' files are also appropriately marked. So if we talk about exhibit LL1A, exhibit
Yes.
LL1B, he knows exactly which file we are talking about.
Yes, in fact, while I'm still addressing the Chair, someone can simply do that while I'm still
Yes,
addressing the Chair,
yes.
not even in tea times.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be easy for now, for reference. And the third file, Chair, you'll see the one that was only marked C on the spine, we can then refer to it as, because it's having LL2 up until LL7. We can mark it on the spine to be LL2 to LL7. No, the exhibits.
So the third file, which is marked Duduzane Zuma Prep Bundle C
Yes.
on the spine, will be marked Exhibit LL2 to Exhibit LL7.
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Now, that file, Chair, the one that is LL2C, you will see if you open it, it's divided into sub-folders. Folder number 2, it's all the documents that were referred to when Mr. Mcebisi Jonas was led. And folder number 3 relates to all the documents which were relied upon and referred to when Mr. Sundaram was led. And folder number 4 relates to the documents which were referred to when Mr. Boysens was led. Folder number 5 relates to all the documents which were referred to when Advocate Ramatlhodi was led. And folder number 6, folder number 7, Chair, relates to only 2 documents. The first document, it's a document depicting the directorship of Mr. Duduzane Zuma in various entities. And the second document relates to, it depicts the shareholding which was held by Mabengela Investment, which is an entity that was owned by Mr. Duduzane Zuma. And 2 last documents, Chair. For ease of reference, we have also produced the A3 size documents. I'm not sure if they found themselves in your file, because they are far much more legible.
Well, the last documents appear to me to be diagrams.
The diagrams, those are the ones that you are referring to.
Yes, okay.
Those will be the documents, Chair, that we'll be referring to from time to time.
Yes.
And Chair, we are ready to proceed. May the witness be sworn in.
Yes, that's fine.
Please state your full names for the record.
Duduzane Zuma.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
Nope,
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
I do.
Do you swear that the evidence you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you very much. Before, Mr. Mkwena, before you start, Mr. Zuma, I just want to emphasize a point that your counsel, or one of your counsel made, is that you are not here because you have been subpoenaed to be here. You are not here because you have been compelled to be here. You are here because you decided last year when your application for leave to cross-examine Mr. Jonas was being dealt with, that you would cooperate with the Commission and that you would make yourself available to the Commission to give evidence. I did say at the time, and I want to repeat today, that I think that was a good decision. This is an opportunity where whatever it is that any witness may have said about you, you get an opportunity to put your side of the story, and the Commission has no particular preferred version. The Commission wants to just get to the truth. You put your side, other witnesses have put their side. At the end of the day, I will look at all the versions and decide what I believe the truth is. So I just want you to know that all versions will be looked at and will be considered, and you must just put your side of the story. Questions will be put to you by the evidence leader. In putting questions, he too does not have any particular preference for any version. He too seeks to simply try and establish what the truth is. I may ask you questions as well. I probably will ask you some questions. The whole point is just to make sure that I understand what your version is. I understand what other witnesses' version is. I may put questions that indicate that I have some difficulty with some aspects of either of your version or of another witness's version, but that doesn't mean that there is any version that is being preferred by the chairperson. It just means that I want to establish where the truth lies. So if you don't understand any question, feel free to say so, and it will be repeated. And I'm sure some of these things your counsel have explained, but I just want to make sure that you understand.
I understand.
You
Thank you, Chair.
understand? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Mkwena?
Mr. Zuma, I have a very limited time to canvass a number of issues with you. What will assist the process in order to short-circuit your evidence is if we can agree on the common cause issues. Common cause issues are those which, after having read all the documents, it doesn't appear as if there's any dispute around them. Do you understand?
I understand. Mr.
Yes.
Mkwena.
The first one is that a meeting did take place on the 23rd of October 2015, correct?
Yes, Mr. Mkwena.
Yes. You are the one who arranged the meeting.
That's correct, Mr. Mkwena.
Yes.
You
meeting-
might just wish, I'm sorry, to raise your voice, Mrs. Zuma.
Okay.
Yes, or bring the mic a little closer, but not too close. Yeah.
Yes. The meeting did take place at the Gupta residence, correct?
That's correct.
Yes. And you are the one who suggested the Gupta residence as the venue.
That's correct.
And you are the one who also drove Mr. Jonas from the Hyatt Hotel to the Gupta residence.
Yes, Mr. Mkwena.
At the time, if you can just clarify for me, at the time when this meeting took place on the 23rd of October 2015, would I be correct that you were already conducting business with the Guptas?
You're talking about the actual business relation?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. And also at the time when this meeting was arranged, it's common cause that your father was still the president at the time. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Zuma. Okay. Now, the other common cause issue is that when this meeting was arranged, Mr. Jonas was the Deputy Minister for Finance. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And Mr. Nene was the Minister of Finance.
Yes, sir.
And on the 9th of December, if my memory serves me well, I think on the 9th December 2015, 2 months after your meeting, Mr. Nene was then dismissed from his position. Am I correct?
That's a time frame? Yes, that's correct.
Now, when you arranged this meeting with Mr. Jonas, you were not friends. Am I correct?
Friends with who?
With Mr. Jonas.
No, not at all.
Yeah. You did not conduct any business with him.
That's correct, sir.
Yes. You did not even sit in the same structures within the ANC, am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
Now, having dealt with those common cause issues, I just want to now move to another topic, which is the Gupta residence as the chosen venue for the meeting. All right?
Yes, sir.
You have made or delivered an application in this commission, and you have deposed to an affidavit in support of your Rule 3.4 application. Do you recall?
Yes, I recall.
Yes. Now, I want to refer you to a bundle, and for ease of reference, you can look at the spine, is the one that we have referred to as LL1B. And if you may turn to page 735, concentrate on the red numbering so that you are not confused, Mr. Zuma.
Yes, sir.
What page?
Page 735, Chair.
Thank you.
You will see that on page 735, this is the statement which you have provided to this commission in support of your application in terms of Rule 3.4, where you are applying to participate in these proceedings and also to cross-examine Mr. Jonas. But if you may refer to page 737, Chair. On page 737, paragraph 7, you told the chair through your statement
Hang
that...
on 1 second, Mr. Mkwena. I think this liver arch file is too full. Maybe during the tea break, another liver arch file can be used. There's something wrong with this, so moving from a page somewhere at the beginning towards the end is problematic. It's
737, Chair, with particular reference to paragraph number 7.
Yeah, okay.
Are you there, Mr. Zuma?
I'm here, sir.
And then in that paragraph, you stated the following. When these rumors started to surface, Mr. Hlongwane, in discussion with me, decided to set up a meeting with Mr. Jonas in an attempt to clear it up. As Mr. Jonas also in his discussion with Mr. Hlongwane, wanted to know from me directly when the rumors were spreading or coming from. The important part is that eventually a meeting was arranged for 23rd October 2015 at the Hyatt Hotel Rosebank at about 1300 or to 1330. And that's what you conveyed in that affidavit, am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
So you would agree with me that at least from having read that paragraph, there's no ambiguity pertaining to the agreement as far as it related to the venue. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And when you agreed, at least on your version with Mr. Jonas, to meet at the Hyatt, you did not raise any concerns that the Hyatt Hotel is not private enough. Am I correct? To discuss the rumor.
That's correct.
Yes. And I just want, from your own independent recollection and knowing the Hyatt Hotel, would I be correct that if there was a need to secure a private venue at the Hyatt Hotel, that could have been easily arranged? Am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
Yes. So in other words, there could not have been any need to go to the Gupta residence while the Hyatt Hotel could have offered another private venue.
That's correct, sir.
It was you and Mr. Hlongwane who decided on the change of the venue. The change of the venue had nothing to do with Mr. Jonas, am I correct?
That would be incorrect. We all agreed to move the venue.
Yes. Mr. Jonas has agreed with you, and I'm simply, trying to clarify and following the sequence of events. Remember that you and Mr. Jonas have agreed to meet at the Hyatt Hotel.
Yes, that's correct.
No issues of privacy were raised with Mr. Jonas.
At that point, no.
Yes. It's only when he arrived when he is being told that a private venue is being sought. Am I correct?
When you arrived at the Hyatt.
When you arrived at the Hyatt.
Yes, yes, that's correct.
That's the only point. Am I correct?
That's the only point. Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Now, I take it that at the time, yourself, Mr. Hlongwane, and Mr. Jonas were members of the ANC, your comrades, am I correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
And in fact, was there any reason why the three comrades could not have actually suggested to meet at Luthuli House to discuss the rumor?
No, I'd find that a bit strange because Luthuli House is a political office. It's got nothing to do with myself, at least.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that at least three of you were comrades
Yes.
who belong to that organization. There is this rumor that appeared to be troubling either you or Mr. Hlongwane. And I'm posing this question in the light of Mr. Hlongwane, what Mr. Hlongwane have said.
Yes.
Maybe let me refer you to the same file, same number, file number B.
Okay.
If you may turn to page 517, and you'll understand why I'm posing that question, why you have chosen the Gupta residence and not Luthuli House.
We remain with the same file.
Page, same file, Chair. We remain the same file, page 517. Now, if you were to go to line number 19 and 20, by the way, simply to orientate you, this is the transcript, Mr. Zuma, which recorded the interview between Mr. Hlongwane and the public protector. And the date of that interview was on the 11th of October, 2016. And during his interview, if you go to line 19 and 20, that's what he said the following to the public protector. The meeting was essentially a meeting between us as comrades, ANC comrades, to address the issue that was disturbing to me. Duduzane knows the people in that space, I don't. So that is the basis of the question as to, instead of having chose, the Gupta residence, wouldn't this have made sense in line with what Mr. Hlongwane have said, that this is the meeting between the comrades, and to choose?
That doesn't make any sense to me, sir.
Doesn't make any sense to you?
No.
All right. And at the time also when this meeting was arranged, would I be correct that you were either a shareholder, a member, or a director in various companies? I don't have to go to their names for now. I'm just saying that at the 23rd October 2015, am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
They also have offices and boardrooms, am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
it did not make sense to you also to arrange the meeting there rather than the Gupta residence?
At that time, it was a proximity and a time frame issue.
Yes.
So we had to choose the closest possible area to meet. So that's why we met at the residence.
Now, when you talk to proximity, during that time, am I not correct to say that you in fact owned a property in Saxonwold? And to be more specific, you owned a property at number 18, Griswold Street in Saxonwold. And on my little research, it's 600 meters from the Gupta residence, and it's almost 7 minutes walk from the Gupta residence. Why was that not the logical private place to meet, and why choosing the Gupta residence?
I think what we need to understand is I've conducted many meetings from the Gupta residence. On a daily basis, there was a preferred meeting place outside of an office environment. My residence purely was a private residence for my stay.
Yeah.
I've never conducted any meetings out of my private place, so we did not go there.
I was addressing, your last statement when you talk about proximity.
Yes.
When I said Luchila House could have been a logical place to go, we said that, well, because you were at the Hyatt Hotel in Rosebank, it made sense for you to go to the Gupta House.
That's correct.
And yet you had another house.
That's correct.
And according to you, was it not private enough, your house?
I don't conduct meetings from my private residence.
Oh. But wasn't the reason, the logical reason why the Gupta residence became appealing and the logical venue, to hold this meeting, was it not because there could have been one of the brothers of the Guptas to be part and parcel of the meeting?
No, that's not the case.
Okay.
Well, let me ask this question. On your version and the version of Mr. Hlongwane, what the three of you were going to discuss, that is yourself, Mr. Hlongwane, and Mr. Jonas, needed only the three of you and nobody else. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, one would have expected that really if one of the three of you has a house close by, that's where you would go, because on your version, what you wanted to discuss had nothing to do with the Guptas. So that's what I would expect, because it's just the three of you, and maybe what you wanted to discuss could very well be discussed as a very personal issue. As I understand the position, and you must tell me if my understanding is wrong, you were friends with Mr. Hlongwane, and Mr. Hlongwane and Mr. Jonas had been friends for a long time, as I understand Mr. Jonas's evidence, as well as Mr. Hlongwane's affidavit. That's what one would have expected. It's something that has got nothing to do with the Guptas. One of you has a house close by. Why don't we just go to that house and sit there and discuss this personal matter among ourselves without anybody?
I see and I understand what you're saying, Chair. But it was a private meeting between the three of us. There was no one else present.
But of course, to the extent that you or the three of you wanted a private meeting, then if you went to somebody else's house, there was always a risk, there would always have been a risk of people intruding and so on, whereas if it was your house, you would be in charge of the house, and if you said you don't want anybody to interrupt the meeting, then nobody would interrupt the meeting. You understand that?
I understand.
Yes, okay.
I mean, just piggybacking on what the chair, was trying to inquire from you. We know, as a matter of fact, also that during that time, you were a member, if not a shareholder, of Mabengela Investment. Am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
And I'm sure that you have conducted a number of meetings at Mabengela's offices.
That's correct, sir.
Was it also not another option to hold this meeting among the friends and, deal with it in a private atmosphere of your own company?
So Mr. Jonas was coming from a NEDLAC meeting. That's where we agreed to meet in Rosebank.
Yes.
Right.
You and Mr. Jonas, there's no ambiguity.
No, I'm just
You have agreed.
I'm just trying to point out, because the distance between Rosebank and my office, Rosebank, and a private venue, which was the residence,
Yes.
is vastly different. It's much closer. And then there was a third party that was coming to the meeting, I'm assuming from his own home in Hyde Park. So we were all in that part of Johannesburg, and the closest place was the place we met.
I see. Now, may I refer you to file, the very same file, if you can go to page 507. Just to close up, the point that I was making in relation to your residence, and let's see what Mr. Hlongwane told the PP on page 507. If you go to line number 9 to line 13, he said the following: to the best of my knowledge, I have been to Duduzane's place in Saxonwold. It is a walking, maybe a minute, then indistinct. So in my, to the best of my knowledge, he does not live there, and there I think is the Gupta residence, because I think he has a house nearby. Have I been to his house? Yes, madam, I have been to his house. Now, following from what Mr. Hlongwane said, a person who has been in your house, he is the friend to Mr. Jonas. You are still saying that it did not make sense for you to have a meeting at your house, having the reason that we gave in terms of proximity.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. You'll see Mr. Hlongwane also proceeds on the very same page. If you can go to line number 25, and up until page 508, line 15.
Number 20?
Page 507.
Yes.
All right. Go to the last line of the page. He says the following is being said by Advocate Matonsela. Because you say when you go there, you go visit Duduzane. That is what confusing me when I am asking, does he live there? And Mr. Hlongwane says, no, he lives in Saxonwold, you said. Have you been to Saxonwold? Yes, he does live in Saxonwold, so it is. Advocate Matonsela says, okay. Have you been to the Gupta house? And Mr. Hlongwane says, yes, madam, I have several times. Several times, yes. As whose guest? I will be going through to Duduzane because he is the one that has primary relationship. Because you'd find him there at the Gupta house, or yes, I find him there. Sometimes we would go together in the same car. Let's put it this way. The one chap that I met there is the one that is familiar with me, so I don't know, I am not familiar with any other people. Consistent with the theme that I was trying to interrogate with the chair, and, to simply point out the obvious fact that it might have been at the time when Mr. Jonas said he was going to meet at the Hyatt Hotel with you, already you had thought that a best venue should be the Gupta residence, and for reasons that I've put to you before, to see that because it was convenient to one of the Gupta brothers.
So I just...
because it was convenient for one of the Gupta
Okay,
brothers.
now I want to ask a question. When you say it was convenient, you're saying that the meeting at the house was already pre-planned by the time we got to the Hyatt.
What I'm saying to you is that the meeting was planned and agreed upon you with Mr. Jonas to meet at the Hyatt Hotel.
Yes.
And for reasons which you tried to explain, the meeting was moved to the Gupta residence.
Yes, that's correct.
And I'm saying that it was moved to the Gupta residence, not to your house, not to the private venue in the Hyatt Hotel, not to any of your offices where there might have been private facilities, simply to accommodate that there must be a Gupta brother present in the meeting.
That's not true, sir.
Now, I want to share with you, but I know that you might have read it, also the version of Mr. Jonas, pertaining to how he arrived at the Gupta residence. If you can close file B and go to file number A. If you go to file number A, sticking with the numbering on page, or with the red numbering, page 6, Chair, is the relevant page. And Mr. Zuma, if you can read paragraph 15 into the record.
Sorry, sir, can you just repeat what
Page 6, we are now on file number A. LL1A.
Yes, I'm there.
And if you go to paragraph 15, and simply to assist you to understand what you'll be reading, if you go to page 1 of that document, page 3 of that document, you'll see is the statement of Mr. Jonas, which he submitted before this commission at the time when he adduced his evidence. And if you may turn to paragraph 15 now, page 6, and if you can read simply paragraph 15.
Okay.
Read it?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes.
We drove in Mr. Duduzane Zuma's car, which appeared to be a two-door Mercedes-Benz. I did not know the surrounding area very well and only gathered, when we arrived at our destination, that we were driven to the Gupta's residence in Saxonwold. Mr. Duduzane Zuma did not suggest to me that we left the Hyatt and that we were going to the Gupta residence or that we meet the Guptas. As Mr. Duduzane Zuma parked his car, I noticed that Mr. Fana Hlongwane had also arrived at the Gupta residence.
Yes. Is it accurate? Do you agree with him that this is what happened?
Which portions? There's portions that I may agree, there's portions that I may not agree with.
Well, identify to the chair which ones are you in agreement with and which ones are you not in agreement with.
I'm in agreement that he jumped into my car. I'm in agreement that we arrived at the Gupta residence, but I'm in disagreement that he did not know where we were going.
Yes. Well, he was here as well. He did testify, not only in evidence in chief, but he was consistent in as far as that version is concerned, even under cross, as to the fact that when the venue was changed and when you decided to drive him to the Gupta residence, he was not told that he was actually heading to the Gupta residence.
So he just jumped in my car and decided he's going to go where I'm going to take him.
Yes, because he said that if you look at the preceding paragraphs, he said that he thought that you were going to take him to go and meet other people. He didn't ask about the venue. You took him to the Gupta residence.
He knew exactly where we were going and he knew exactly who we were going to meet and why.
Yes.
I might have missed something.
Yes.
Did you know that you were going to the Gupta residence when he jumped into the car, or is that something he got to know after he had jumped into the car?
So there was a phone call that happened in the interleading time because we were the two sitting at the
On
Hyatt.
the same day?
Yeah, on the same day.
Yes.
So this is during
Yes.
Our first interaction at the Hyatt Hotel.
Yes.
So there was notably a third gentleman that was not there. He was on his way.
Yes.
A phone call came in, yes. A phone call came in, and that's when the change of venue happened. That discussion was had between myself and I call him Uncle Fana, Mr. Hlongwane. And I passed the phone over to Mr. Jonas.
Yes.
Yes, and they had the discussion, and there was a mutual agreement to where we were going to meet.
Yes.
And then it was decided that we'll jump into my car, and then the rest is documented.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will shortly take you to Mr. Hlongwane's evidence, but if let's while we are still on that same page, simply to contextualize, the evidence of Mr. Jonas, and I'm giving you this opportunity to react to it. It's paragraph 14. He says that when Mr. Duduzane Zuma arrived at the Hyatt Hotel, we had a brief discussion. He appeared quite nervous and spoke in very vague terms. He said nothing of substance, except to say that his father, then President Jacob Zuma, liked me. After a while, I indicated that I was under time pressure. He said that the place was crowded and that he had important matters to discuss, but that he wanted other people to join the discussion and that he wanted to drive to a more private place, which he said was close by. I assumed that we would be going to an office nearby, so I said, let's go. I have received a call from Fana Hlongwane as Mr. Duduzane Zuma, and I told him that I was with Mr. Zuma. That's what actually he told the chair when he testified. And you said, according to you, that it's not accurate.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, the next topic that I need to address with you, Mr. Zuma, is, why you? Why were you the one chosen to facilitate this meeting to discuss, the rumor? And that is the theme that I want to interrogate with you. Maybe let's start that by going to file B, file number B, LL1B. If you go to page 613.
Did you say we must go to B?
Yes, LL1B, Chair.
And what's the page number?
Page 613.
Yes.
Now you will see that is the affidavit of Mr. Hlongwane, the person whom you refer to as the uncle, which was submitted in support of his Rule 3.4 application to cross-examine Mr. Jonas and to participate in this commission's proceedings. The relevant page that I want to take you through is page 618. 618, Chair.
Yes, I've got it.
Paragraph 9. Paragraph 9 and 10. This is what Mr. Hlongwane said in his affidavit. He said, I confirm that I know Mr. Jonas for many years and that we became good friends. 10. When in fact tried to negotiate a number of transactions in the past, the detail of such business relationship
I
is
think
not.
it says we, Mr. When I
We,
thought you said
sorry,
when.
yes,
Yeah.
we in fact, thanks Chair, we in fact tried to negotiate a number of transactions in the past. The detail of such business relationship is not relevant to the issues at hand and I will therefore not burden this statement with further details relating to this aspect. The objective facts are that we knew each other well in October 2015. Now, that's what Mr. Jonas at least informed the chair through the 3.4 affidavit. What is quite clear from paragraph 9 and 10 is that him and Mr. Jonas were friends and they knew each other from a long time ago. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Yes. Now, what simply escapes one mind, and I'm sure you're here to explain, is that why would the two friends that knew each other from this long time decide that you must be the one who arranges a meeting simply to discuss a rumor?
Well, Mr. Mkwena, you say why the two decide. Is that what you intend saying?
No, why he was chosen.
Okay.
Yes.
Firstly, I was not chosen. I decided to put the meeting together. And the reason for that is, on the one side, yes, they're very good friends, they've known each other, that's common cause for a long time. You have a situation where there's a number of things being said in the background. The one person is not aware of it, and the other one is alleged to be talking about it. So I'd raise these matters over a period of time with Uncle Fana to say, look, you've got a good relationship with Mr. Jonas. Why am I hearing that these murmurs and these rumors behind the scenes? Why am I hearing that and you're not coming across them? So by the third time of asking, I said to him, can we resolve this? And he left the matter in my hands. So
Yes.
I was the one left responsible to put the meeting together, which I did.
And that's exactly, what I'm trying to understand.
Yes.
Me and you have agreed that you are not friends with Mr. Jonas, correct? You did not interact with him on any social level?
Not at all, sir.
Yes.
Actually, I think, according to Mr. Jonas, the two of you had never met or been introduced to each other until October 2015. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Check.
Okay.
You also do not even have his cell phone number?
That's correct.
Yes. Yet you become the person that must facilitate this meeting?
Exactly as it happened. Yes.
Why, do you know why was it difficult? I mean, at the time they were still friends, Mr. Jonas and Mr. Hlongwane.
Yes.
Why couldn't one friend call the other
'Cause
and
the one-
say that there is this rumor, which, it's disturbing? Can we meet, to deal with this rumor?
think that-
Why you become the third person to be the one to facilitate a meeting simply to discuss the rumor?
As I said, sir, there's one person that's aware of it and one person that's not aware of it.
Yes, but there's nothing that is stopping one friend
Of course not.
to call the other friend
Of course not, sir.
to say that there is this rumor. Come, let's discuss this rumor. They don't even need the third person. Am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
Yes. Now, from your own version, you say, if I understand it very well, and I'm simply paraphrasing, is that the meeting of the 23rd of October 2015 was simply for the three of you to meet and to discuss a rumor, nothing else. There were no offers that were made, and that's your version.
Yes, that's my version, sir.
Yes.
Before you move away from the previous question, Mr. Mkwena, I do want to get the full perspective from your side of your involvement, because I think it's important. It's an issue that keeps on coming back to my mind as well, namely, if, as we now know, you had really never met Mr. Jonas, obviously you might have met in meetings, but you have never been introduced to each other. You didn't know each other in that sense. And you were just friends with Mr. Hlongwana, and Mr. Hlongwana had been friends with Mr. Jonas for many years. It is strange that Mr. Hlongwana shouldn't either speak to Mr. Jonas himself about these rumors or get somebody that, if he can't, for whatever reason, or he feels that maybe it won't be needs a third person, why he didn't think of getting somebody who knew both himself and Mr. Jonas to say, you know both of us, maybe you are friends with both of us, there's an issue between us, won't you help us resolve this? So there is that question in my mind, and I would like to get your full perspective, because it seems strange why somebody who is a stranger to one of the parties should be asked to be the one to make arrangements for the two friends to meet and discuss an issue.
Thank you, Chair. Now, from my side, I, with all due respect to you, Chair, I don't see it as strange that an unknown entity tries to resolve an issue. I've been in meetings where people have put me together with other people in a room where I did not know the third party. And similarly, I've done this not just with this method and with Mr. Jonas, but on numerous other occasions. Sometimes everyone is known to each other in the room, sometimes they're strangers in the room. But the common issue is resolving the issue. Now, when it comes to why me, I'm the one that raised the issue with Uncle Fana, as I call it. Now, the difficulty is if, in my view, if he approaches Jonas, Mr. Jonas, sorry, at some point he's going to ask, where is this coming from? So now, I'm obviously the younger guy in the relationship. So as the younger guy, I said to him, look, this needs to happen. And he said, if you're putting your neck on the line, you need to be part of that meeting. Because when he asked me, you're just listening to people saying stuff, he's going to ask who? And that person is me. So as part of the meeting setup, as part of putting the issue on the table, they needed the horse's mouth, and I was the horse's mouth. So I don't see it strange being in a meeting with an unknown person, regardless of how long the relationship has been. There's an awkward issue. I'm the one that raised the issue. I'm the one that put the issue across. The meeting either resolved it or didn't resolve it, and that was it. It's that simple.
I understand completely the need for you to be present at the meeting to the extent that you might be the one who knew about these allegations or these rumors.
Yes, sir.
That I don't have a problem with that. The difficulty that I have is you being tasked with the responsibility of organizing the meeting, because that is my understanding of what your evidence is. That is my understanding of what Mr. Hlongwana says in his affidavit. I would understand if what Mr. Hlongwana did was either to speak to Mr. Jonas and say, let's have a meeting, or get somebody else to arrange that who is known to Mr. Jonas, but say you must be present because you know about these rumors. That would have I would have understood. But with regard to why it may be, at least for me, it's natural to expect that in this situation, Mr. Hlongwana, one would expect Mr. Hlongwana to either speak to Mr. Jonas himself to arrange the meeting, or to get somebody who is known to both of them. Is that in a way, the two parties who have issues need to have confidence in the third party that is being brought in. You understand that?
Understood.
Now, if you don't know somebody, it might be difficult to have confidence in that person for purposes of helping to find a solution to a problem. Whereas if it is somebody that you know, and maybe both parties, namely Mr. Hlongwana and Mr. Jonas, have confidence in that person, they trust that person won't be biased, will just try to help them. Maybe they know that that person has got skills of trying to help people resolve issues. Then it makes it makes a lot of sense to me. You understand? That's where I'm coming from with my question. But you have put your perspective. But if you have got something more that you would like to say about it, please feel free to do so.
No, I understand
You understand?
your view.
Yes.
I understand
okay.
your view. Thank you.
Okay.
Maybe to help me understand, as you've attempted to make the chair understand, if I may refer you to page 737 of the same bundle page.
And maybe, I'm sorry, Mr. Mugwan, maybe just to complete the picture of what I was saying, Mr. Zuma, in that kind of situation where two friends have an issue that they want to resolve between themselves, actually, if the one friend knows that the person being proposed to play the role of helping them resolve this issue is a friend to the other one, but a stranger to him, he might be more reluctant to agree to this person. But if the person who is being asked to help them resolve the issue is somebody that is either friends with both of them or not friends with any one of them, but knows them, then there might be more chances of acceptance. You understand?
I understand, Chair, if I may just...
Yes,
to
yes.
that. I was tasked with it. It was a simple, if you're raising this, may lie to you, you run with it.
Yes.
That's exactly what I did.
Yes.
You resolve the issues. If
Yes.
you're going to raise these sorts of matters,
Yes.
then you need to put your skin in the game.
Yes.
And that's exactly what I did, because I needed to stand by whatever it was that
Yes.
information was being passed around, and I needed to communicate it.
Yes.
Now, I strongly disagree with you, Chair. And
Yes.
I understand your point that there's a certain way
Yes.
certain meetings are conducted. This was
Yes.
informal. These sorts of meetings happen all the
Yes.
time. Like I said,
Yes.
I've been part of meetings where
Yes.
I haven't known certain people in the room, but I was asked to attend
Yeah.
certain meetings. We've either resolved the issues or we haven't resolved the issues, and we
Yes.
moved on.
Yes.
And this case is exactly that same case. It's not the
Yes.
first time it's happened, and it will continue to happen. It was just purely
Yes.
to put matters on the table
Yes.
to try and resolve them, Chair.
You must just understand when I put questions to you like this, that it doesn't mean that's a permanent view in my mind.
No, not at all,
It's
sir.
simply to be transparent with you, to say this is what's going on in my mind. Tell me what you might be able to tell me. And my view might change at the end, but it's just to be transparent with you to say, this is what is concerning me. What can you tell me about it?
I appreciate it, Chair.
Okay,
Your
all
view looks like it's changed, so I think I did that.
Chair, just a few questions. I just want to wrap up on this issue. I see that we are came to
Yes.
quarter past. I have referred you to page 737, simply to close on this issue that we're debating with the chair and piggybacking on it. If you read paragraph 8, just one line, and that's what really troubles me about how this thing was arranged. You are saying there, it's your affidavit. I met Mr. Jonas for the first time at the Hyatt Hotel as arranged via telephone, discussions, SMS exchange between us. And I think that's, support what the chair, or at least, also brings into light the questions as to why you are meeting with him for the first time, you don't know each other, you are coming to discuss this rumor, and that's why we are posing those questions to you, so that you can at least make sense of what you are saying, that, why you? Why were you the chosen one?
Yes, as I said earlier on, I haven't disagreed with any of
Yes.
the questions that you put forward. I haven't disagreed with me having to have agreed with you that I'd met him for the first time. Whether it was via SMS, whether it was via a phone call, that was the first time I met him.
Yes.
And I see absolutely nothing wrong with that. How do you meet
Good, yeah.
people?
Okay.
You made contact, and it's either they want to meet you or they don't want to meet you for whatever reason. And we met.
Yeah, and this rumor, since it was troubling Mr. Jonas so much, and I think you also were troubled with it to the extent that, you know, there was this meeting that you had to facilitate. Did you approach any other of the senior ANC members, you know, to tell them about this rumor
No,
among
it's-
this comrade?
It was no one else's business. It was between the two of them, and I was trying to resolve it.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Chair, we can take, is this the appropriate time to take?
Yes,
Tea
we'll
adjournment.
take the tea adjournment.
I might have stepped into some of the minutes of the tea adjournment. I'm not sure what is the time.
It's after 15:15. We'll take the tea adjournment and resume at 25 to 12. We adjourn.
All rise.
Yes, let's proceed, Mr.
Thank you,
Mkhwena.
Chair. Except, Mr. Chair, that we might have competition with the aircon, and I know that at some point you might see that my voice is fading.
Yes.
I'll try to raise my voice, but I'll also ask Mr. Zuma to try his level best.
Yes, he has a soft voice.
Yes.
Let's see, there have been times when we have had to switch it off because one can't hear
Interferes,
properly.
yes. We'll
But
try.
let's see how it goes.
Mr. Zuma, I want to explore the last topic, on the issues pertaining to Mr. Jonas and what transpired on the 23rd October 2015. And clearly that topic is that, simply to explore who was present at the meeting and what really happened at the meeting, and that will be my last topic under that. Having in mind the fact that your version is quite clear that the meeting was simply to discuss a rumor and it was amongst the three of you at the Gupta residence. Am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
Yes, yeah.
That's correct, sir.
And if I may refer you to file A, Chair. And if you may turn to page 4. That is Mr. Jonas's witness statement, which he submitted before this commission. And I'll try to summarize what is contained in there in order to save time. If you look at paragraphs, from page 4, paragraphs 3 to page 6, paragraph 14, Mr. Jonas gives details, specifications, and times when different calls, exchange of SMSs, even the missed calls, which, occurred between yourself and him and, Mr. Hlongwane at some point. The question that I simply, and if you look at that detailed narration of what according to him transpired and the exchange of the telephone or of the cell phone calls and the SMSs, you will not find, at least from his version, where he says that prior to the 23rd October 2015, when you called him, you disclosed to him that the reason for the meeting was to discuss the rumor. Would that be a fair reading of his statement?
So can you please repeat that question?
The question is, if you read Mr. Jonas's statement, those paragraphs that I've referred to, you will not find anywhere where he says, when he called you, you disclosed to him that, the purpose for this meeting was supposed to be to discuss the rumor. Would that be a fair reading of Mr.
Yes,
Jonas's?
I understand the question, that would be a fair reading, sir.
Yes. Now, I want to know from you, having regard from the time when you started inviting him to the awards up until the 23rd of October 2015, did you disclose to him that you wanted to discuss with him a rumor? And if so, I might have missed it also in your affidavit. If you can point me to affidavit where you've said that.
That was discussed?
You told him?
Yes, the meeting is to discuss an issue between himself and Uncle Fana.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then is that what you conveyed at some point in your affidavit? I might have missed it.
I'm not sure if it's there or not. Can I just reflect on it?
Okay. Yeah, because I seem to recall, I might, I'm speaking under correction, that I've read your
Yes.
affidavit that was deposed to, in support of the 3.4, application. I do not seem to recall seeing that during that exchange of calls, SMSs, you told him that the reason for the meeting is simply to discuss the rumor.
That's correct. And if you look at my affidavit, so there's no detailing of any SMSs or phone calls either.
Yes.
So I didn't touch upon any of those topics at all.
And
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand that correctly. Are you admitting that in the affidavit that you deposed to in support of your application for leave to cross-examine Mr. Jonas, you did not anywhere indicate that, you did not anywhere in the affidavit indicate that ahead of the meeting, you had told him that the purpose of the meeting you were seeking to have was to discuss the rumor. That's what you are saying.
Yeah, what I'm saying is that and many other topics that may have been discussed telephonically or by SMS,
Yes.
I have not included in my affidavit.
In the affidavit?
That's correct.
Okay, good.
Yes. And if you look at, those paragraphs of Mr. Jonas, he's detailing, even the text of the messages that were exchanged between the two of you. He gives you the time frames around when this text message were exchanged and also the telephone calls that were made between the two of you. Now, what I want to understand is that all this effort was simply made in order to discuss the rumor, and that's your version.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Now, you also state in your affidavit before this commission that at some point during that meeting, one of the Gupta brothers did peep inside the room in order to ascertain your availability for the next day in a different meeting. And you say that was Rajesh Gupta, am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
Before you proceed, Mr. Mkwena, let me go back to the earlier question. So you say that in one or other conversation on the phone between yourself and Mr. Jonas prior to the 23rd of October, you had told him what the meeting was about. It's just that you didn't include that in the affidavit.
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And when you told him, what was his attitude? I take it might have been it might or might not have been, I don't know, the first time that he heard about there being rumors that had reached your ears, maybe reached Mr. Klongwane's ears. What was his reaction?
His reaction the whole time was very relaxed and calm. I think he took his understanding with the relationship that he may have had with Uncle Fan at that time, at that face value, to be nothing untoward.
Yes.
So it wasn't there weren't any apprehensions of any sort. It was like, okay, if that's the case, we'll do so.
Yes.
Now, subject to scheduling and availability, that only happened a bit further down the line.
Yes.
But there was no hostility of any sort from anybody.
Yes. Well, Mr. Mkwena may have been intending to mention this, but let me say, in one of the statements that I think Mr. Jonas deposed to, which is in one of the files, he refers to a meeting or an occasion when he met with Mr. Klongwane in the presence of somebody called Mr. Bongani Moore. As I understand it, he says on that occasion, Mr. Klongwane told him that you would like to talk to him. And as I understand it, it was on that occasion that he therefore asked for your number. That is Mr. Jonas. I hope I'm getting it right. Is the position that he was the first one to make contact with you, between the two of you, to make contact with you in terms of either a phone call or an SMS? Between the two of you?
Chair, I don't recall. I'll have to check that.
Yes.
But I'm inclined to say that I probably contacted him first. I'll have to check that. I'm not sure.
Okay, all right. Thank you. You see, the context of that question would be, I mean, they were meeting, that is Mr. Hlongwane and Mr. Jonas, on that occasion, prior to the 23rd. And I think it may have been October or September, I can't remember. So if really Hlongwane was concerned about rumors about something that Mr. Jonas was said to be, rumors that he was said to be spreading, one would have thought that he would have talked to him about them to try and resolve it, or told him what you wanted to talk to him about, rather than say to him, somebody that you have never met wants to talk to you about it. But we have discussed the issue, but I just put that angle for the sake of completeness. But if there's something you want to say about it, feel free to do so.
No, I think we've covered that point. Thank you.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Chair, we don't even need to speculate about the chronology.
Yes.
If one turns to page 4, where I've referred to page 4 and paragraph 3, 4, and 5, and I think that would assist and bring light to the questions of the chair. Mr. Jonas says that on approximately 28 August 2015, when I was in Luanda at an African caucus of finance ministers, I recall being contacted by Mr. Fana Hlongwane, whom I knew relatively well, telling me that Mr. Duduzane Zuma would like to speak to me to invite me to an awards ceremony. 4. I subsequently met Mr. Hlongwane during October 2015 in Johannesburg in the presence of Mr. Bongani. Chair, you are referring to him as Mo.
Yes.
Maybe I think I would be safe to mention to him as More.
I'm embarrassed. Yes, so it might be more.
It might be More, Chair.
Yeah, okay,
Yes.
all right.
Bongani More, and who told me that Mr. Duduzane Zuma wanted to meet me. During the course of the conversation, he mentioned that the Guptas were important to him. I indicated that I would not want to be associated with the Guptas. 5, I asked Mr. Hlongwane to provide me with Mr. Duduzane Zuma's number. I had not previously met Mr. Duduzane Zuma, nor had any previous interactions with him. And that's what, the context about the questions of the chair. Now, moving to the topic that we're dealing with, is that you say that you were sure that the person who peeped in the room was Mr. Rajesh Gupta.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. And you say that you are certain that it was him, definitely.
That's correct.
Now, may I refer you to file number B? If you can put file number A away. File B, page 517.
So that's 517.
Yes, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir.
We did visit this transcript before, but for different reasons.
What page did you say?
Page 517, Chair.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Um,
If you
it
go to
may be,
line.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mkwani.
Yes.
It may be that you should try and approach the end of the
This
questioning
line.
in relation to
Yes,
Mr. Jonas.
I'll try to do that, Chair. 517, line 19.
Yes.
I'll just read to you what Mr. Hlongwane told the PP in relation to who might have been present or not. And I'll do it quickly. In order to save time, I'll read it. From line 19, he says, the meeting was essentially a meeting between us as comrades, ANC comrades, to address the issue that was disturbing to me, Duduzane to me, Duduzane knows the people in that space, I don't. Somebody did come into that space. I would, for me, I made an assumption that it is a member of the Gupta family. Somebody of slim height, slim build entered the room. He was clearly known to Duduzane and briefly and left. Whether the person was looking for another meeting or another person, I cannot say to you, but Duduzane, triple dots, then the question is posed, did that person speak to Mr. Jonas? No. Did you ever have occasion to leave the room? No, I did not have occasion to leave the room. And then line number 6, right on page 15 of your affidavit, paragraph 27, you say, I deny that Mr. A.J. Gupta was present at the meeting or that any member of the Gupta family ever participated in the discussions between ourselves. In this regard, I can categorically state that I had not met A.J. Gupta at that stage. He was completely unknown to me then. Earlier on, I thought you said you met A.J. before that meeting at a park. No, I can explain, okay? With this thing, advocate, I did not say I met A.J. earlier on. I said I met Rajesh for lunch with Duduzane. Oh, was it Rajesh in Parkhurst? Yes. Okay, on paragraph 28, you say there is a person who came into the room. It was definitely not AJ. You said you had met Rajesh before. Was it Rajesh? Mr. Tlongwane says then, the person that came in was in build, Mr. Franz Lekuba in build and height, so it was not the fellow I had lunch with at Parkhurst. So it was not AJ. Mr. Tlongwane says, number one, it was not the fellow I had lunch with in Parkhurst, and the fellow you had lunch, you say it was Rajesh. Mr. Tlongwane says, Rajesh, yes, and it was not any of the famous two brothers. Maybe there is more, but it was not any of the famous brothers. It was not AJ, it was not Rajesh. Yes, that's what he says. Are you sure it was not Rajesh that you had lunch with in Parkhurst? Yes, I'm sure it was. Now, if I can simply pause there, and I'm simply posing this question so that at least this part of evidence must be clear also at the chair. On the one hand, you are saying that definitely it was Rajesh that came in. Mr. Tlongwane says that no, it was not Rajesh, and it was not any of the famous, brothers. And the question is that which version should the chair believe when he assesses this evidence? Who really came in? Who was there? Who is telling the truth? Who's not telling the truth? You or your uncle?
Looking at the events and the versions from what the uncle is saying, Uncle Fan, I can't give an opinion, I can't give a view on it. He was there, he saw what he saw, he did see what he didn't see.
Yes.
I know what I saw, I know the lay of the land in that house very well. The gentleman that walked in was a Mr. Rajesh Gupta.
And I'm posing this question because he seems to say to the PP, public protector, that he had met Rajesh before. He knows him and is definitely sure that the person that came in was Mr. Rajesh. And on the one hand, you are saying that, well, it was Rajesh. And I'm simply putting that so that, one must at least know what really transpired on the day and who was present at the day. And both of you are certain about what you're saying, but now both versions, unfortunately, cannot be reconciled.
How so? How so, sir?
Because Mr. Tlongwane says that Rajesh never came in, it was not Rajesh, and you say that it was Rajesh.
I can only speak for what I know.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
As far as you know, did Mr. Tlongwane know Mr. Rajesh Gupta quite well? I think earlier on there was a reference to, I think, his affidavit, that is Mr. Hlongwane, where he seems to have said he had visited the Gupta residence several times. So as far as you know, did he know him quite well?
At that point, definitely not.
As far as you know, he didn't know him quite well
Yes,
at that
I'm the
time.
one that introduced the two of them, so I know they didn't know each other.
Yes.
Well, that's correct.
Okay, and the other Gupta brothers, do you know whether he knew them quite well?
My understanding is I don't think he'd met them prior to this event.
To that meeting?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
But I mean, he appeared to be very sure from what I've read, when he told the PP, he was clearly sure that it was Rajesh. It was not Rajesh that came in. And he said the reason why he knows it was not him is because he has met with him before.
Yes, that's exactly what it appears to be.
Yes.
We are reading the same document, but I was not there when the public protector meeting was happening, so I can't comment on that.
Now, let's also deal with another point that is not quite clear. While we're still on that file, and I'm trying to move as fast as I can because the chair told me to wrap up this issue. If you turn to page 724.
74, 70.
724, yes.
724.
Maybe you can even leave that. Go to 729. That is the affidavit of Mr. A.J. Gupta, which was also submitted before this commission. The relevant portion, Mr. Zuma, is the one that appears on page 733. If you can go to page 733. And I just want to read paragraph 12 so that we can clear up what really happened and who was present. Paragraph 12, Mr. Gupta says the following to the chair. I also gave evidence under oath to the public protector denying the allegations and the versions claimed by Mr. Jonas. And I also deposed to an affidavit in the Minister of Finance application in the High Court, Pretoria, which is self-explanatory. I point out that it is highly unlikely that the meeting took place, because if it did, in the manner alleged by Mr. Jonas, he would immediately have reported it to the nearest police station as any other ordinary citizen was legally obliged and duty-bound under the law to do. Now, here is an affidavit which was deposed 2 years after the incident in question, and Mr. Gupta is now saying that he doubts. He said that I point out it is highly unlikely that the meeting took place. I'm sure that you don't agree with him. I mean, your version is that the meeting did take place.
That's correct, sir.
Yes. Now, may I refer you to file A? File A, if you may turn to page, if I'm correct. Page 23. Now, before putting, clarifying questions with that document, would I be correct that you were, either directly or indirectly, part and parcel of the Oak Bay investment, either through other entities or in a personal capacity?
Through other entities, correct, sir?
Sorry?
Yes, correct.
I'm correct.
Yes.
Now, there is this press release, if you can look at the date, is the 13th of March, 2016.
What page is it?
Page 23, Chair. 23, file number A.
Oh, I thought I was there. In file A.
File A, Chair.
Well, what I have there is not
Is this the
a statement.
public protector's interaction?
Yeah, it's public protector's report. I've seen that statement that you're talking about, but it's not here. It's not on page 23.
Page 23.
23.
Yes, Chair.
Oh, okay. No, I'm sorry. I think I'm looking at the black numbers
Yes.
rather than the red numbers.
It happens as we proceed
Mr.
in the
Zuma, were
day.
you also looking at the black numbers?
No. Which file is it?
File A,
A.
yeah, A, and go to page 23. Concentrate on the red numbering. I know that it might be confusing because these documents were used.
Well, even the red one is not the statement, it's still the public
The
protector.
advocates, the modern sellers, the start of a interview
Mr.
with
Zuma,
Mr.
your page, your red.
I'm on the same page as you. The
Yeah, same. Yeah.
line 2 is where advocate Badonsela starts.
Yes.
Chair, it's a document immediately after Mr. Jonas's statement, witness statement. It follows immediately on file A.
Yes. So, Mr. Mokoena, page 22 is the end of Mr. Jonas's statement.
Yes.
Page 23 starts off with the opening of the meeting of Advocate Madonsela's interview.
Mr. Chair, for some odd reason, mine, I do have the file. It was handed in as Exhibit C2 by Mr.
Yes, I
Tringle,
have seen
yes.
this statement, but certainly not on this page.
Yes, mine is 23. The legal team is 23 as well of Mr.
Yeah, I think somebody is sabotaging me and the witness.
For a moment, I was thinking that I'm looking at different files altogether, Chair.
Yes, but I looked at that statement last night. If you
Yes.
want to, if the witness has got it, you
Yes.
can go ahead and put the question in the
Now,
meantime.
this is the press release which was made on the 13th of March 2016. And the essence of the meeting, of this press release, I don't have to read it, it was read into the record before, is that if you look towards the middle, it says, to be absolutely clear, there was no meeting at all. Can you see?
Yes, I see it, the one-liner.
Yes, that one liner.
Yes.
Now, was this correct, what was conveyed by Oak Bay on the 13th of March 2016, that there was never a meeting at all
A meeting with who is the question?
with yourself, Mr. Jonas, and Mr. Hlongwane?
The meeting most
Well,
definitely.
I'm sorry, Mr. Zuma. Maybe you do need Mr. Mokoena to just read parts of the statement so
I
that he
think so, Chair.
understands the
Yes,
context.
I was
yeah.
avoiding to do that, but we can do that.
Yes,
Let's
yeah.
read it,
Please,
maybe.
please, sir, that would be helpful.
Atul Gupta, not even in the country on the 27th March, faceless purveyors of these lies should produce evidence to support them.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mokoena. I know you are doing that because I said you
You've
should
rushed this,
approach finishing on this issue. The statement appears to be a media statement. I think was a media statement.
Yes.
And at the top, it says news and analysis, and then it says Oak Bay. And then the heading is Mcebisi Jonas. There was no meeting, Gupta family. And I
Yes.
think you can just read so that he understands the context.
And the second portion that I was just about to read, it says, statement from Oak Bay Investment on behalf of the Gupta family in response to the Sunday Times article, How Guptas Shopped for New Minister, 13 March 2016, issued on behalf of the Gupta family, Johannesburg, South Africa, Sunday, 13 March 2013, in quotes. There have been an extraordinary number of allegations around the Gupta family. in recent weeks, several of which have involved the finance ministry. As we have said countless times, our primary focus is on business, not politics. In brackets, see Sunday Times report. We challenge the faceless purveyors of these liars to provide evidence of any of these allegations. To be absolutely clear, there was no meeting at all. And you must read that with a caption that the chair have actually read, and also in report to say, to the allegations that are actually being indicated there, how the Guptas shopped for a new minister.
So I think, Mr. Zuma, the context is that after Mr. Jonas's allegations had been published in the media, that there had been a meeting at the Gupta residence at which you were present, according to his version, where he said he was offered the position of Minister of Finance and was offered, I think, 600 million rand. After that had come out, this media statement was then issued.
Yes.
It says Oak Bay, and it says there was no meeting. That's what the Gupta family is saying. So that's the context.
Yes.
And what they were saying here is that, as I understand it, those who say there was a meeting must come forward with evidence.
Yes.
Yes. So I think Mr. Mkwena is asking you whether you wish to comment on this statement.
That's helpful. Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I do wish to comment. Now if you go to line number 3, in bold it says, statement from Oak Bay Investments on behalf of the Gupta family in response to the Sunday Times article. Now, this response was made by a spokesperson or whoever on behalf of the Gupta family. If that's what they're saying, then that's what they're saying. Were they part of the meeting? I've said none of them are part of the meeting.
Yes.
So your question, I'm trying to get a bit more clarity from your side.
Yeah, the question is not what was discussed or who was present. The question simply is that, you are saying, and you've told the chair that, well, the meeting did happen.
Most definitely did, yes.
Yes, and they are saying that the meeting did not happen. We are trying to simply, and you were at that point part and parcel of the Oak Bay investments, am I correct?
Yes, in one way or another, that's correct.
Yes, and this statement was made on behalf of Oak Bay.
On behalf of the Gupta family by Oak Bay.
By Oak Bay?
Yes.
Yes. Now, which is the correct version? Was there a meeting or was there a meeting?
I point out to the same line, on behalf of the Gupta family, so I cannot be attributed to a response that was made on behalf of the Gupta family. From my side, I've stated very clearly there was a meeting.
Okay.
Who was present in the meeting, I've made that very clear, sir. Thank you very much.
And not necessarily that you might be able to comment on this, but one would have expected that before Oak Bay issued this statement on behalf of the Gupta family, they would have checked with all the Gupta brothers to see whether any one of them is aware of any meeting that took place. And if any one of them was aware, then maybe they would have said there was a meeting, but maybe we were not involved in that meeting.
So who was not involved, sorry? Maybe who was not
involved? No, I'm saying if Oak Bay, before issuing the statement on behalf of the Gupta family,
yes, Chair.
One would have expected that they would have checked with all the Gupta brothers whether they were aware of any such meeting, and if the information from any one of the Gupta brothers was that I am aware that there was a meeting, but I was not involved. Maybe the statement would say there was a meeting, but none of the Gupta, there was a meeting at the Gupta residence, but it involved so-and-so and so-and-so and not any Gupta brother. You understand?
I understand.
Yes.
It's definitely open to
yes.
interpretation.
Yes.
But I think just for clarity, the statement, as I said, was on behalf of the Gupta family.
Yes.
Who discussed how
Yes.
they convey that message.
Yes.
That's, they
You were
did
not
that.
part of.
I was not part of that.
Of that. Yeah.
Were any of them present in the meeting? Interpretation from my side would be they were trying to state that they were
Yes.
not part of the meeting. There's another alternate hypothesis that's being put forward
Yeah.
that they knew. Why didn't they mention that? And that's something that you've expanded on.
Yeah.
I cannot comment on that. I can comment on my involvement. Now, me
Yes.
being a shareholder, co-shareholder in Oak Bay and whatever else, whatever other companies exist, that's a matter of fact. But this statement can't be attributed to me now. I cannot be thrown into the same boat.
And you were not party to its preparation.
Most definitely not.
Yes. Okay.
I'm trying to jump a number of things that I would have actually wished to convey with you, to converse with you. Mr. Jonas informed the chair about the events, post the meeting of the 23rd of October, 2015. He went at length, informing the chair how he arranged the meetings to meet with Mr. Nene in order to tell him about what happened. I mean, in his version is that he said that there were offers that were made to him, monetary offers and a ministerial position. He also contacted Mr. Goran. He contacted the ANC General Secretary at the time. He went to Lituli House and informed Mr. Zizi Kodwa. He informed the ANC Treasury General about the events of the 23rd October 2015. And what, I simply do not understand from all these things. If these offers did not happen, why would he go to such an extent and the length of, informing people in those important positions about what he said happened on the day? Do you know? Why would he fabricate these lies against you?
When you asked him, what did he say, Mr. Mukwana? Because I cannot give you an answer on that.
You don't know?
I don't know.
Yes.
What response did he give, if you recollect?
His answer was that there were offers that were made on the 23rd of October, 2015, which were disgusting to him and which were made by people who were not even supposed to make those offers. And he was also made offers of money, 600 million. If you accept the offer of ministerial position, 600,000 on the spot. And that is the reason, after the meeting, he took such an effort to tell those other individuals. Now, that's what, and your version is that he's lying. Those things did not happen. My question is that, why would he go to such extent to fabricate such lies against you? Do you have any reason why he would lie about you?
I have no idea. I do not want to jump into speculation.
Yes.
But if I may just add something to that as well. I think another question that should be posed is, why didn't anyone ask me for my view or my version?
Please just repeat that
I'm
last
saying,
sentence.
from the other side, I also need to ask why my view or my version was not requested at the time. Because there's emphasis on a time frame. This was raised in the media. There was media statements put out. The man went on TV and said whatever he needed to say. I'm not taking away from why he did it. I don't know. He did what he had to do. Good for him. I have no issues with that. Now, what I'm saying is, it's the first time I'm being asked this question. The only time I came across it was on a 3.3. I was not given an opportunity by the public protector. You don't see my record in the public protector's report. Have you asked why? No.
Of course, maybe this can be said. As I read one of the affidavits deposed to by Mr. Ajay Gupta, he says he was not approached to give his version himself, but he initiated. He said he wanted to give his version. And as I read what he says in his affidavit, it's almost like he's saying, I forced the public protector to actually to interview me, and so that I could put my side of the story. And he says what he was given was a superficial interview. So I mentioned that to say, of course, maybe it could be said that even if you were not asked You could have said, look, public protector, I want to put my side of the story as well.
You're absolutely correct, Chair. If I might just touch on that as well.
Yes.
And I'm glad you raised it because I did get an invite
Yes.
to go and attend the meeting with the public protector and the team.
Yes.
Then within a matter of days, it changed into a summons or a subpoena, whatever it was at the time.
Yes.
And my response, I got a telephone call from, I think it was a PA at the time. And I was traveling at that time. And I told her, look, I'm traveling. And I wasn't in the South African space for a while. I still am not. And I told her I'm traveling, but I will be back within the next week and a half, 2 weeks. I will come and see you when I'm back. I've got other commitments now. And she said, fine, let us know when you're back. We just want to have a discussion. But before you know it, the report is wrapped up. I didn't have a chance to give my version of events. It's the first time I must come and speak in front of everybody. And then I'm being questioned along the lines of why I must, what do I think of Mr. Jonas and why he did it. No one's concerned about me not getting a fair shot. So I just wanted to put that across. It's not a complaint in any manner, but I just want it to be known that I've complied the whole time. I'm being asked these sorts of questions. I appreciate the questions. I'll answer them, no issues. But let's be fair on me as well, please.
You might not understand why Mr. Mkwena was putting that question to you, but I think your lawyers will understand, and I understand. You see, after the hearing of all evidence, at a certain stage, lawyers will stand in front of me and say to me, I must accept the evidence of certain witnesses, I must reject the evidence of certain witnesses about things that have been testified about by various witnesses. And where there may be two or more witnesses who have different versions of what happened in regard to a particular matter, one or more lawyers, including members of the legal team, they might say when that time comes, Chairperson, there's a problem with accepting Mr. Duduzane Zuma's version, and that's because of A, B, C, D. And if they are going to say anything along those lines, they need to give you an opportunity to comment on that. So when he says to you, why do you think Mr. Jonas would tell an untruth about what happened? He is actually trying to say, if there is something you know that could have motivated him to say you were party to a discussion or to a meeting where he was made this offer, you could then say, well, I know why he would say that. This is what would motivate him to say that. So that's the idea. It's not anything else.
No, and I agree. And it's not.
Yes.
I'm not being
okay.
Adversarial about it. Not at all. With all due respect, sir.
Yes.
If just one point, and I raised it purely because a lot of the evidence pack revolves around it, the public protector's report.
Yes.
Maybe you can shed some light. And you mentioned that Mr. AJ Gupta had to basically force himself to go and have the discussion. I gave my version of why I'm not reflected in the documents. Can you just help me out and maybe make me understand why I wouldn't have been, since I'm integral to a lot of what's going on here? Why wasn't I invited? And there's a whole report that came out and I'm massively implicated. Why do you think they would have missed out on that step?
Well, that's the public protector, of course. Yes. So we don't know. We can't provide an answer. We don't know, but it may well be that even if the public protector who was responsible for that report is no longer in office, it may well be that if you ask your lawyers, they might write to the current public protector who has access to the records that were there at the time, and maybe she might be able to say, I've looked, I can see why he was not given a chance.
Sound.
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
Okay. But I think connected with the question that Mr. Mkwena put is this. As I understand your evidence, and you must just tell me, based on your affidavit, the discussion at the meeting involving you, Mr. Jonas, and Mr. Hlongwana was really restricted to the discussion of these rumors. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Yeah. And as I understand your evidence, most of the time you played the role of a spectator or mediator in that meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Yes. You don't say in your affidavit, and you must tell me if I misunderstand this, you don't say that you provided the background to the rumors, do you? Is my understanding correct?
Yes, that your understanding is correct.
I understand it correctly. And as I understand it, you say that at the end of that meeting, the issue appeared to not have been settled as such, but there was some understanding, if I put it in my own words, between the parties, but not that it was resolved completely. Is that right?
That is right,
Yes.
Chairperson.
And my understanding of what you say now in your affidavit suggests that when the parties parted, when the meeting ended, nobody was unhappy about anything. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes.
Chair.
To a very large extent, everybody appeared to be satisfied. Is that right?
That's correct, Chair.
Yes. Now, when I see that picture emerging from your affidavit of how the meeting ended, I look at what Mr. Jonas says. On his version, as you know, the meeting involved a Gupta brother, and the meeting ended, as I see it, badly, negatively, on his version. You understand?
I understand you.
Yes, negatively. And then he says, if I recall correctly, on his way to the airport, he made a call to Minister Nene, and I think he made also a call to Minister Gordon, and because he wanted to talk to them about what had happened at the meeting, which had made him unhappy, as I understand the position. And he arranged to meet with Minister Gordon on the Sunday. I don't know if the 23rd was a Friday, 23rd October was a Friday or not, but he made an arrangement. He was going to the Eastern Cape, and he made an arrangement to meet with Minister Gordon on Sunday. And he made an arrangement with Minister Nene that they would meet on Sunday. And he says he did meet with Minister Gordon on Sunday and mentioned what had happened, or at least the essence. Minister Gordon has given evidence here and has deposed two statements, and he confirms that he was phoned that same afternoon by Mr. Jonas, and that they met on Sunday. And he confirms that Mr. Jonas said he had been made this offer that he was talking about at the meeting. And Minister Gordon says he could tell that Mr. Jonas was still kind of upset or unhappy. And Minister Nene also confirms in his testimony and affidavit, as I recall, that he was called by Mr. Jonas that same afternoon. They arranged to meet on Sunday, but on Sunday they moved that to Monday morning, and they did meet on Monday morning at the office. They went out to the balcony because they thought, well, maybe the offices might be packed, and that at that meeting, Mr. Jonas told him effectively the essence of what had happened at the meeting on his version. So you get the picture of somebody who came out of the meeting being unhappy, started phoning, people, the minister and Minister Gordon, and both of those people I think were connected with the Ministry of Finance at some stage or another, and ultimately told this story, and they both confirmed that is what happened. So that's something I'm drawing to attention. You might not be able to say anything about it. Maybe all you might say is, as far as I'm concerned, when the meeting ended, there was no animosity, there was no unhappiness, and that I don't know what he's talking about.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
That's what you're saying.
I'm saying that just to be clear, that after the meeting, everything was cool.
Yes.
And as I've mentioned in my affidavit, I bumped into him. This is Mr. Jonas.
Yes.
Twice.
Yes.
Subsequent to that meeting.
Yes.
And my view was there was no hostility at
Yes.
all. So that's the way I took it. What
Yes.
happened behind the scenes, the phone, I don't know. I
You
cannot
don't
comment
know,
on it.
yes. Of course, as far as your role is concerned, he does say at the meeting, you were quiet most of the time, so that maybe he might have been unhappy about the fact that you brought him to this meeting on his version, but he doesn't say you said anything at the meeting that made him unhappy. But also he does say that evening he called Mr. Hlongwane as well, and he says he expressed to Mr. Hlongwane, I think he said he spoke 2 times that evening, afternoon and evening, from the Eastern Cape. He phoned him, and he expressed his disgust at what he said Mr. Hlongwane had done. That's, I thought I would just mention that there is that version. On your version, meeting ended very well. There was no problem. On his version, the meeting ended in a very negative atmosphere, and he was unhappy. He started contacting other people, and later on, according to him, he phoned Mr. Hlongwane and expressed his disgust. So you might again say, there's nothing I can say. All I know is that the meeting ended well.
Yes, I confirm again, and I stick to what I said
Yes.
earlier on, Chair.
Yes.
And, you know, he'd also mentioned that he'd called me afterwards,
Yes,
to-
yes.
basically give me a mouthful as well on it. I shouldn't
Yes.
conduct myself in that way.
Yes.
You know, the way the meeting happened shouldn't have, whatever it is that he said
Yes.
that I said.
Yes.
And that phone call never came through. So the point I'm trying to make
Yes.
is the communication that happened telephonically, I can't comment on.
Yes.
Some of it may have happened, some of it may not have happened.
Yes.
But as I said to you, everything at that point, the meeting, the contents of the meeting went the way they did.
Yes.
Whether issues was resolved or not, that's a
Yes.
different story. But when
Yes.
we all emerged from that room,
Yes.
it was all cool.
Yes. Then just one last question from my side, and I don't know how far Mr. Mkwena still has questions for you. He said that when you met at the Hyatt Hotel, you made a remark to the effect that I don't know whether you said you're old man, but basically your father liked him. I didn't see you denying that allegation in the affidavit. Is that correct?
I did not include it in my affidavit. As I
Yes.
said, there's a lot of SMSs, phone calls
Yes.
that were not included.
But
This
it's-
piece of information as well, I did not include.
But it is a remark that you made.
No, that's not the remark that I made.
You did not make.
Most definitely not, sir.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yes. If you may turn to file number A, I'm not sure which file you're having with you. Page 11.
Page
11.
Thank you.
In relation to Mr. Jonas, I'm proposing to restrict you to 5 minutes now
Yes, Chair.
to wrap up. Is that right?
Is it
You'll
the
be
5
able to-
minutes of the judges or of the lawyers?
Of the lawyers.
Page 11, paragraph 31, simply contextualize the question that I was going to put, but the chair have already done that. It's not as cool as you say, Mr. Zuma, because to Mr. Jonas, the meeting did not end as cool as you suggest. He says on paragraph 31, I was very shaken by what happened at the meeting. due to the sensitive and threatening nature of what had transpired at this meeting, and because of the uncertainty of the events that were playing themselves out on a national basis, I decided I would initially discuss what had occurred with the people I felt I could trust. Later that day, I contacted Minister Nhlanhla and advised him that I had something serious to tell him. He was on his way to KwaZulu-Natal, so we agreed to meet on his return on the on Sunday, 25th October 2015. Paragraph 32. Upon landing in Port Elizabeth, I spoke telephonically to Mr. Hlongwane and expressed my disgust about what had transpired, particularly in respect of the manner in which he had deliberately misled me. I told him he should never again do what he had done to me or to any other person. He suggested we should have a meeting to discuss what I have raised, and paragraph 32 takes care of the meeting that was now scheduled between Mr. Nene and Mr. Jonas. And so that is his version. You have already answered to you, everything was cool.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. Now, the other point that I wanted to clarify with you, I mean, you were saying that you were not given an opportunity by the public protector to place your version, to her, and, that maybe you were treated unfairly. One would not be able to comment on that, but you had other avenues, that you could have actually explored at the time. I mean, here is the person, according to you, spreading lies about you. These are serious allegations that were made against you. Do you agree?
Most definitely, yes, sir.
Definitely, yes. Did you open any case against Mr. Jonas?
Are we exploring the avenues? These are the avenues you're talking about.
Sorry?
These are the avenues that you're talking about.
Yes, but I'm saying that now that you are testifying, I mean, from that time, 23rd October 2015 to date, did you open any criminal charge against him?
No, I did not, sir.
Yes. Did you bring any action for defamation against him?
No, sir, I did not.
Yes. Did you lay a complaint against him with the ANC about these lies?
It was none of the ANC's business. It was a personal matter, sir.
Okay. So that the short answer, you did not do it?
As far as I'm concerned, neither did he.
Okay. Now,
I'm sorry. I think somebody has completely switched off the aircon. It feels a little hot. Maybe it should be on, but not too high. So maybe somebody could take care of that. Thank
the
you.
last question on this aspect of Mr. Jonas.
Yes, Mr. Mkwena.
No, I thought that there's something that maybe Malian colleagues wanted to raise. We know, as a matter of fact, and you've also dealt with it, I think, when we started with your questioning, that 2 months after that meeting, you have already said, agreed with me that Mr. Nene was removed and he was replaced by Mr. Van Rooyen. Was this simply a coincidence?
I believe so.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I'm moving now to Mr. Tokwano.
Yes, okay.
Sorry,
Yes.
may I please have a comfort break, sir?
Yes.
I just need
Oh, comfort
please,
break.
comfort break, please,
Oh,
Chair.
okay. No, that's fine.
Thank you.
10 minutes will be fine.
3 minutes max.
3 minutes. Okay, all right.
Chair, it might be
number
difficult
one.
to compute 3 minutes. Maybe 10 minutes might be better.
Yeah, just to be on the safe side, let's say 10 minutes is now 25 to 1, so we say we come back at 1:45. We adjourn.
Thank you, Chair.
You said you are moving to something else now.
We are moving,
Yes.
respecting the time limitations. I'm moving to Mr. Tukwana.
No, that's fine. I just mentioned one thing, Mr. Zuma, and you might have no comment about it, but I mention it because it is in my mind. So it's the transparency I was talking about earlier. On Mr. Jonas's version, at this meeting, if I recall correctly, he gets told that Mr. Nene is going to be removed as Minister of Finance. Now, I can't remember whether he gets told that expressly or it's just implied because according on his version, he's being offered the position of Minister of Finance. And if I recall correctly, he says that the Gupta brother who was there told him, I hope I'm not misrepresenting what he said, told him that if he needed advisors, he would be given advisor, they would give him advisors. And that's October 2015, October 23. And about 6 or so weeks later, 9 December, Mr. Nene gets removed as Minister of Finance. And of course, the person who gets appointed is Mr. Des van Rooyen. And in terms of the evidence that I've had here, he comes with 2 persons or advisors who are alleged to have links with the Gupta family. So I'm just mentioning, you might not be able to say anything, I'm just mentioning something that comes to my mind as I listen to the evidence.
Thank you for that, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Zuma, the last question I asked when I dealt with the issues of Mr. Jonas, whether or not he did lay a criminal charge, it was also put to Mr. Jonas as to why didn't he lay criminal charges, right? I'm just putting that to you, yes.
Yeah, okay, I agree. Thank you.
Now, let's move on to Mr. Tukwana. Mr. Hlongwane, when he was interviewed by the PP, he told the PP that you used to frequent or visit with him, to the Gupta residence.
That's the public protector when you say PP.
The public protector.
The public
yes.
protector.
The public protector.
Okay.
Yes. Do you confirm what he says, that you guys used to frequent the Gupta house, used to visit, you also being in the company of the Gupta brothers?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. And do you know whether Mr. Makashule, did also visit the Gupta residence?
I'm not sure, I've never met him there.
There was no occasion where you met Mr. Makashule at the Gupta residence?
Not at the Gupta residence,
Yes.
no, sir.
And do you know Mr. Tukwana?
No, I do not know Mr. Tukwana.
You have never met him?
I may have in passing, but in this relation, no, I have not. I do not recall meeting him.
Now, may I refer you to the very small file, in comparison to the other files. It's file number C, LLC, Chair. And I'll try to be as quick as I can. And if you may refer to...
You see, Mr. Mkwena, before the tea break, I did have a file marked C, but certain changes happened during the tea break, and the file that was marked C no longer has C.
I think that they were trying to assist the chair with those files that you're not able to navigate through, but now...
Is it supposed to remain marked C?
I think it will be for you, for ease of reference in future, Chair. If you can mark it LLC.
Okay.
And we'll be dealing with the documents from folder number 2. And I think that's the first, folder. And I was referring Mr. Zuma to page 18 of that document. With particular reference to paragraph 52, and simply to save time, Mr. Zuma, I will put to you what Mr. Dukwane told the chair when he testified. They are contained from paragraph 52 to 59. Let me read them so that I can react to them at once, and then I can pose questions so that it can be quickly. He said that I was ushered into a room whilst Tony and Makashule went to a different room. After a while, they joined me and accompanied by other people, and the notable was Mr. Duduzane Zuma. Tony, in the presence of Makashule, asked me to sign a document purportedly prepared by me on the letterhead of my office addressed to Nulani Management Services, appointing them to run a whole project I presented in the cabinet meeting on a turnkey basis. I refused to append my signature. If I may pause, Mr. Zuma, he says that when all these things were happening, they were happening with you being part and parcel of that meeting and in your presence. And he says that in the said letter, my surname was written Dukwana, D-U-K-O-A-N-A, and only Makashule knew that is how my surname is written, because I always preferred and wrote it as Dukwana, D-U-K-W-A-N-A. And then he says that D-U-K-O-A-N-A is a Sesotho version of my otherwise Xhosa surname. In an effort to try to persuade me to append my signature to the said letter, Tony intimated to me that both Makashule and Duduzane Zuma were recipients of monies in cash from a mining project, from a mining project from Jagersfontein mine. Neither Makashule nor Duduzane Zuma disputed Tony's claim. They both nodded their heads in agreement. Further, Tony told me that Makashule would not benefit from the project because it belonged to me and him, in brackets Tony. Makashule did not dispute Tony. From this project, Tony told me that I would receive a monthly payment of 2 million rands. I was told by Tony that if I append my signature at the time, an instant payment of 2 million would be given to me. In this regard, a gentleman of Indian descent was called by Tony, and Tony whispered something words in the language unknown to me. The gentleman left the room and came back with a black pilot bag. This same bags frequently used by lawyers. I distanced myself from that, Mr. Zuma. And 57, it says, I still persisted that I cannot sign the document to which Tony said that he had spoken to Makashule, that upon my signature, the provisional cabinet would ratify the appointment. Tony then opened the pilot bag, which was full of 200 rand South African banknotes, stating that the money was mine if I signed the document. I still refused to sign. I went to the extent of suggesting that it would be prudent that the letter I was being compelled to sign should be referred to Mr. Fenter, Provincial Legal Advisor in the Office of the Premier, to give a legal opinion about the legality of the contemplated appointments. After that suggestion, Makashule mumbled to Tony, to which Tony asked that I give him back the letter. I had intended to keep the letter to refer it to Mr. Fenter. And that's what Mr. Dukwana informed the chair. And what is your comment in this, on these issues?
I'm not sure what Mr. Dukwana is talking about. That's my comment.
Yes. When you say you are not sure, you are saying, is it either you are not sure whether what he's talking about or whether you don't agree with what it's stated in those paragraphs, or that all of the things that he's saying in that statement did not happen at all?
I do not agree with each and every part of the statement, paragraph by paragraph. I do not agree that this meeting took place. I do not agree that he's placing all these wonderful people in this meeting.
Yes.
So in entirety, I completely refute.
Yes.
Well-
Now, okay.
Well, Mr. Zuma, you might wish to just reconsider whether that's the answer, whether that answer reflects what you intend saying.
Okay.
I heard you earlier on saying I think I heard you saying you did not attend any meeting involving Mr. Dukwana. Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct, sir.
Yes. Now, if he says you were present at that meeting, at this meeting, and you say you were not present, then you would not know whether this meeting may have taken place, but he's just mistaken about you having been present. And if that meeting did take place, those things might have happened. You were not there, you don't know.
I appreciate the clarity, and I take your view, and I agree with your view.
Yes, yes. So your position is that you were not present at such a meeting?
That's correct. That's correct.
And are you definite about that, or is there some doubt?
No, definite.
You are definite about that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now, piggybacking on what the chair have, conversed with you, if I understand your evidence is that when Mr. Jonas testified about the offers which were made in your presence, clearly your answer is that he's lying. That never happened. Am I correct?
I gave my view,
Well,
and I gave my version.
I don't know if he put it that
Yeah,
way.
that's not the way I put it. I gave my view, and I gave my version.
Mr. General Boysen said when he gave evidence about Mr. Duduzane, he said he is very respectful to, I think, adult people. so he might not have put it that way, that he's lying, but he has put his version.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the version is either you are correct or Mr. Jonas is correct.
That's right, sir.
Yes. It can never be both of them that are correct, because you are saying that it did not happen. He said that it did happen. Am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
Yes. Mr. Dukwana also told the chair about the offers, and he says that you were present. There was no uncertainty about him or about your presence at that meeting. And you are also saying that he is incorrect. That did not happen.
That's what I'm saying. That's correct, sir.
Now,
What of course, Mr. Mkwena, was not done, if I recall correctly, when Mr. Dukwana gave his evidence, is that his evidence that Mr. Duduzane Zuma was present at that meeting may not have been tested because there was nothing to suggest that Mr. Duduzane Zuma's version would be different, that he did not attend such a meeting. So I'm just mentioning that maybe we don't know what Mr. Dukwana would say when he's being told, Mr. Duduzane Zuma says he was not present there. Are you sure he was there? So I've just mentioned that that's my recollection.
well, it was put to him, Chair, and at least mine is not only, premised on that event, but when
Yes.
reading these documents again,
Yes.
it was clearly, he was clearly
It was
asked.
clear.
And there was
Okay.
no uncertainty on his,
No,
on
that's
his
fine.
side.
Yeah.
And simply the point that I was making is that now we are having two people, Mr. Jonas and Mr. Dukwane, who are talking about the offers that happened in your presence at the Gupta residence. And both of them, according to you, they are simply fabricating this evidence?
Yeah, I'm being conveniently placed at a
Yes.
supposed crime scene, yes.
Yes, and I'm sure that none, myself and you, would not be able to proffer any answers as to why would they really fabricate this evidence against you.
Yeah, definitely.
We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Okay. Now, you have provided with, obviously, the statement of Mr. Tukwana to the extent that it implicated you in terms of Rule 3.3, am I correct?
Yes, he did mention me.
Yes,
Yes.
and you did also have the opportunity to read it and also to decide whether or not, to challenge that version or not. You did not, submit any version contradicting him, nor did you apply in terms of Rule 3.4, at least to challenge his version and also to cross-examine him. Am I correct?
Yeah, reading his version of events, I felt it at the time, and obviously through consultation that I was mentioned and I was not implicated in any allegations that may have come to the fore.
Yes, but if a person says that there were those, unlawful or illegal offers, at least on the version of Mr. Tukwana,
Yes.
that were made, and he was made to sign certain documents when in fact he could not have the authority to do so. He was made to sign those things by individuals who are not even officials of government. Surely, in that meeting, it was not a meeting where one does not actually attribute any illegality on it, isn't it?
Yes.
And you're present. That's why I'm saying that. That's why you're given a Rule 3.3 notice.
Correct. And as I said, I didn't believe, I still don't believe I was implicated. I believe I was mentioned. The meeting, as I said, I've got no recollection of it. It did not happen. So that's the angle I took.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, let's move, Chair, I want to move to Mr. Sundaram.
Yes, before you do so, again, Mr. Zuma, you might have no comment or anything to say about this, but as I understand it, Tony Gupta is Mr. Rajesh Gupta, is that right?
That's correct, sir.
Yes. That is the same person that on your evidence peeped in at the meeting at the Gupta residence while you, Mr. Klongana, and Mr. Jonas were having a meeting and wanted to check if you were available for a meeting the following day or something.
That's correct, sir.
Yes. Now, there is a lot of issue as to if Mr. Jonas's version is correct that an offer was made to him such as the one he has described at that meeting, who of the brothers made the offer? And at least on your version and Mr. Klongana's version, the only Gupta brother that was around in the residence was Mr. Rajesh Gupta. Assuming that maybe he is the one who made the offer, if an offer was made, it's interesting that according to Mr. Tukwana, this is now another meeting, and Mr. Tukwana says this same person, offered him money in a briefcase. When he was giving evidence here, a briefcase was shown to indicate what type of briefcase he was talking about, lawyer's briefcase that Mr. Mkwena disassociates himself from. And he said the bag, the briefcase was full of 200 rand notes, that was offered to him. So there are just those features that happen. But again, if you were not at the meeting and your version about the meeting at the Gupta residence with Mr. Jonas is different, you might have nothing to do. But it's just interesting that there is this meeting happening, and apparently Mr. Rajesh Gupta is in the venue, at the venue on both occasions.
I think I see your point, and
Yes.
one further, I find it even more interesting that I'm always placed in the
Yes.
middle of these discussions.
Yes.
And I happen to be a couch or a lampshade in these meetings.
Yeah.
Didn't see anything, I don't say anything. So
Yes,
I find that
yes.
more interesting than the point you're making. But I take your point, Chair.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mr. Gwena?
I'm told that we have now approached the lunch adjournment.
Oh, okay. We'll take the lunch adjournment now. The time is 1:05. We will resume at 2:05. We adjourn.
All rise.